Howdy, welcome back to Dion Talk. In the beginning of the video, I'm going to talk about my streams of income in 3 different phases. So this is not the 7 streams of income, which most millionaires have, which I have a video of. So I'll just read those off really quick because most of these aren't the ones I have. Earned income, have that. Business income, interest income, dividend income, no. Rental income, yes. Advertising income, no. Licensing income, no. Those are the 7 most common streams of income of millionaires. Maybe I'm not a common millionaire. If this is your first time to my channel, to explain why it seems weird to me to say things like streams of income as a millionaire is because 10 years ago, I was a single parent with 3 kids, found out about $89,000 in bad debt in my name that I didn't know existed until the divorce, had been laid off from a police department, went to work for a trucking company, Old Harbor Freight Lines, was on track to make $115,000 that year, and they went on strike. So I started teaching at a truck driving school. A little over 10 years ago, I was making $17 an hour teaching people how to drive trucks. To flash forward, it took 8 years to reach a net worth of $1 million, so bad debt free net worth of $1 million. And then it took 2 years to double that to a little over $2 million in net worth. So those are things I'm still kind of adjusting to, getting used to. Before reaching millionaire status, streams of income, like most people, in the 90s of percent, have 1 stream of income. We literally are trained this since we're kids. You go to school. School has a building that you go into. A bell or a buzzer or a timer goes off and you sit in a chair for around 8 hours. You take a lunch break. You take literally play breaks when you're young, breaks to get from one class to another as you get older. At the end of 8 hours, you go home. You work Monday through Friday in school as a kid to prepare you for working Monday through Friday as an adult. You get your weekends off, you get your evenings off. It's like we're trained that that's the way life is supposed to be. So most of us have a W-2 income now, 1 source of income. One of the reasons I developed other sources of income and reached millionaire status is because I was tired of my sources of income being taken away due to things outside of my control. After Desert Storm, the Marine Corps downsized. In 2008, laid off from a police department because when there's a recession going on, the cities aren't making a lot of money, so they just think, there's no more crime, so we don't need cops anymore. So a bunch of us got laid off. The trucking company went on strike. I started a business, and my ex emptied the wages and tax account, so that business got closed down, so that's one of the ones that I failed at. So having side hustles or sources of income that didn't always rely on me selling my life 1 hour at a time started before I became a millionaire. I was working a W-2. When we work a W-2, a lot of people think, and they say things like I just did, a job sucks. That's why they pay you to be there. You're compensated for your time. The limiting factors are you only have so many hours in a day that you can work. So some of the benefits that people don't often always talk about with a W-2 that don't exist in other sources of income is, in most cases, once you work past 40 hours in a week, you start being compensated with overtime. Some union jobs will pay you overtime if you work over 8 hours in a day. I haven't had very many of those. In law enforcement, you can work overtime at a construction site and earn a couple $100s an hour to sit in your car and make sure that the construction site's safe. So overtime can be a stream of income associated with your W-2. But W-2 jobs also offer things like benefits. Actual physical benefits, healthcare, unemployment insurance. Then we all found out that during the pandemic, you might get extra unemployment, extended unemployment, and unemployment is an attractive thing. So a lot of people want to work at W-2 because they need health care. And then that unemployment insurance. Retirement accounts, which I hate. But while people are working, if you have no other form of investing, a retirement account is a benefit, kind of like the match. I do have a video on my channel called, it was a live stream, Retirement Accounts Suck. So those are the things that come up with a W-2. But there's a lot of W-2 jobs. I joined the Marine Corps in the dinosaur age, where my take-home pay was like $700 every 2 weeks. I also, when I got out of the Marines, I've had several different jobs. I worked in a auto shop doing oil changes. I worked at the windmills in California doing maintenance on windmills. And as you got more certificates and skilled in your labor, you could make more money. I got a commercial driver's license because you get paid a lot more to drive a truck than to load the stuff that goes on the truck. Some people can get an HVAC technician skill, or it can be something like developing actual skills like public speaking. But to get your W-2 to make the most amount of money, when we're kids, we're told, college, 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 or you're a failure. But there are so many ways to increase what you make from your W-2 job that don't rely going to school. Sometimes it's a certificate. Sometimes it's a experience. I'm from the generation where longevity was rewarded. So I was raised from people who had the mindset that the longer you were at a company, the more you were rewarded. I actually, my intention when I started working a W-2 job was 20 years Marine Corps, 20 years law enforcement, retire with 2 pensions covered. 40 years of work, more than 40 hours a week to retire on less than 40% of what I made. Not a good plan. But it's what we were told was the right thing to do. So most of us need a W-2 to at least get started. The concept on my channel is the average person can reach financial freedom in 10 years or less, even if you're not starting from the best position. That's my goal, is to share that information with you. But in those 10 years, a W-2 is going to probably, for most of us, be an actual requirement. Pretty much for the first 5 years, guaranteed. So you have your W-2 job, and I talked about ways to increase it. That can be overtime. In my generation, it was longevity. The longer you stayed at a company, the more money you made. You got a cost of living raise, you could get promotions. There are literally videos and books on how to climb the corporate ladder. Before escaping the rat race became more catchy as a phrase, climbing the corporate ladder was a thing. Recently, and I say recently, last 10 to 20 years, it's been more lucrative to change companies. We're not rewarded by staying for the length for a pension because most places don't have them. And even things like school districts, municipalities, places that have pensions, those places are filing bankruptcy, so people are getting paid out a percentage of what they were expecting. What they worked for to earn over decades, they're getting a portion of. Right now, if you're working for a company, you're probably going to get a cost of living raise of somewhere between 3 and 9%. If you change companies, you're probably going to get a 15 to 25% cost difference to attract you to the new company. So that's been a big change with W-2 jobs, not so much staying with one job for years and years, but figuring out when is the right time to change companies to increase your income. So W-2 to me, though, is the most risky form of income. The Marines wouldn't let me re-enlist. The police department was laying off. The company went on strike. My company shut down, and I was paying myself as a W-2 employee of my own company. Those are jobs, those are things that can go away. You can also lose your ability to work. If you work in the legal field and you do something that gets you disbarred, all of the work, training, and education you put into becoming an attorney, it's not pointless. There are still jobs you can do, but being an attorney is probably not one of them. What about the stories we hear of somebody who goes to medical school for years and years, 2, 3, 4 years, and then finds out they don't like the sight of blood? Now they've limited the type of work they could do with the degree that they invested all their time and money into. Something can change with you that takes away that job. If you're a truck driver, first of all, you're held to federal mandates for drugs. So no matter what's legal in your state, you're held to a federal standard. Second, you can have accidents that they blame on you, that get blamed at driver at fault accidents, which can make it really hard to get a job, even if the accident wasn't technically your fault. You can lose the ability to keep or maintain your medical card. And now all of your years of driving translates into being a dispatcher and making a third of what the driver was. So that to me is the most risky thing, is that first source of income, which I've had most of my life. I started working at 8, and I pretty much worked ever since. I've always had a W-2 job. Since 2018, I haven't had to. So I started around 2010. By 2018, work became optional. Before being a millionaire, I had a couple of side hustles, actually. One that most people will understand. I needed to make extra money, but I'm a single parent with 3 kids. So working a ton of overtime would have meant less time with my kids. Developing a side hustle while my kids were young might not have been an option. People run lawn care services on the weekend, which would have been giving up more time with my kids. People do couch flipping where you buy things off of, and it's not easier. It's more available now to do this with things like OfferUp, but we had eBay back in the day where you could buy things, fix them up, and resell them. So those were possible side hustles that I could do, but almost every one of those would have taken me away from my kids more. So I developed a side hustle at home before I reached a millionaire status. I played games like Ultima Online, EverQuest, World of Warcraft, all of the massive multiplayer online games. And in those games, there is an economy. Some of the games you can actually sell the currency for real dollars. Some of the games, it's the items in the game that are hard to acquire that you can spend the time and energy on to acquire and then sell those. Another side hustle that I had before being an investor and before having a net worth that was even positive, I did a form of house hacking. So as a millionaire, I'm still house hacking, which is reducing or eliminating your largest expense, which for most of us is housing. My first version of it, as far as an investor, was to move into a duplex and rent out the other side, reducing my housing cost from the apartment I was living in at $1,500 a month, reducing my cost to about $300 a month. So saving $1,200 a month. Not really a source of income, but choosing to do something that reduced an expense by $1,200 a month, to me, let me save $1,200 a month more than I was before. But before that, when I went to become a police officer for a city in Washington State, the academy is about an hour, a little over an hour away from my house. Almost an hour away. 6 months. So single parent, 3 kids, they were still kind of young. How do you attend a 6-month academy where you train for 8 to 12 hours a day and you need to study for 4 to 6 hours a night? I rented out a room in my house because we had a 4-bedroom house. My daughter shared a room. My son had a room. I had a room. So it was 4 bedrooms. Rented out a room to a young couple for free. They didn't pay me any rent. So I wasn't house hacking to reduce or eliminate my housing costs. But them having free housing provided me with 24-hour-a-day live-in daycare. So a stream of income was renting out a room in my house, sharing our living space, to reduce or eliminate daycare costs. So there are streams of income that a lot of people talk about, like stocks. I don't have any. But in 2020, I emptied my retirement account because the CARES Act allowed you to do that without a penalty, up to $100,000. And I put that money to work in a rental property. I don't have any dividend stocks. I don't invest in crypto. I don't invest in gold as a store of money to have, $10, $20, $30,000, $100,000 worth of metals. But I do have enough to trade or barter just in case it ever is needed, which everyone will say will never happen unless you live right now currently in Ukraine or Russia or anywhere where things are happening that sanctions are happening to currency drops to no value, those kind of things. Those were the sources of income before reaching millionaire status. So the sources of income that got me to millionaire status. The biggest thing I was able to do was house hack. So the first house hack was to reduce or eliminate the cost of having daycare. But then I moved into a duplex. When I moved into a duplex, I reduced my housing costs from $1,200 a month to $300 a month. I had a bad debt to income ratio and I had low income. So qualifying for a duplex would have been difficult. I lived in a house. I actually retained the house through our divorce, had to refinance to pay her out her portion of the equity, which put me underwater on the house. So I couldn't even sell it. I owed more than it was worth. But I moved from the house into an apartment for 2 years. For 2 years, I rented out the house very poorly in the first year because I hadn't educated myself. I hadn't found things like the book One Rental at a Time or BiggerPockets or anything to learn how to run a rental business. But I finally started to make money with that property. And at the 2-year mark, I had rental income on 2 years of tax returns, which allowed the lenders to look at a duplex I was purchasing and include the rent from the other side in my debt to income ratio, which allowed me to purchase the duplex, even though I still had bad debt to income and a low income for qualification. So for those 2 years, I continued to make money as a side hustle from online video games. I was renting out the house. So this is part of the contributing to the income snowball, which hasn't kicked in yet. I moved into the duplex, which almost eliminated my housing cost. And around that time, when I was working at the truck driving school, I developed a side hustle that most of us can do, usually after you've been working for maybe 4 years or more in any field. I developed a side hustle as an expert witness. So I've worked in the military, I've been a Marine, and I've been a truck driver, and I worked in law enforcement. So those are 3 industries where I can provide testimony on what it's like to be a police officer, what the rules and regulations are like, what it's like to be a truck driver, what is reasonable for a truck driver to be aware of and knowledgeable on. I suppose being a Marine would count. I've never testified on one of those cases. But there are national databases of attorney firms that are looking for people who are experts in IT, HR, truck driving, welding, HVAC work, working in elevated spaces, almost any field that you've worked in that you have mastered, spent 4 or more years working in a field, you can provide testimony for cases in that field. So Expert Institute is one that I'm like on a list of people that gets called. So I have attorneys reach out to me. They hire you with a retainer. So how you get paid for this is you get $1,000. You can set your retainer at anything you want, 500, 1,000, 1,500. I picked 1,000, nice round number. They send you $1,000. You are now retained by that company. This is 1099 income. So remember, you're going to have to pay taxes on this later. You can have write-offs, but you don't get to use things like depreciation. So you're probably still going to have a tax obligation. Most cases, as an expert witness, don't go beyond your retainer. Several emails back and forth. You might get deposed once, which is where they take a deposition where they have, I've done it in person, but recently for the last 2 years, it's been Zoom meetings. That's generally as far as they go. If it goes to trial where you're actually going to go to court, sit on the stand like in the movies and give your witness testimony, your expert witness testimony, then you can bill, and for me, I bill $150 an hour. I've only had to do that twice in like 5 years. It's very rare that it actually goes to trial. That is a side hustle that you can do. And pretty much any field that you've worked in for 4 or more years, you can provide expert witness testimony in that field. So getting on the list is what takes time. That contributed to me being able to save for the next investment. Rental income, W-2 income, increasing my skills. I was working my way up in my company. Since I had the idea of financial freedom, I presented an idea to the owners of the company, which if I didn't have the idea of financial freedom and I thought I really needed this job, I would have kept my mouth shut, kept my head down and just done my job because my kids needed it to survive, right? But since I realized that a job is just a tool that gets you to financial freedom in 10 years or less, I presented my idea to grow the company to the owners. They quickly demoted me down to the president of the company. So my pay started to increase. So think of things you can do to increase your income, which for me ended up being the job I was at. For some of us, like I mentioned earlier, it's going to be changing companies. You're going to get a bigger raise if you change companies. So right around this time where I had the house rented out, I was doing expert testimony, I was saving, I was still working overtime. I had worked my way up in the company to make more money than $17 an hour. I was house hacking. 2 years later, I bought another duplex. A little less than 2 years later, I bought another duplex, and then I did a fourplex, and I'm house hacking now, and then I bought a triplex and another duplex. So over the next total of about 11 years, I've acquired 16 rental units. Rents go up every year. They have so far in 11 years. I have not had a year where they've gone down. I've not even had a year where they stayed flat unless I chose not to do a rent increase. And the mortgages, for the most part, stayed pretty much the same. Taxes and insurance go up a little bit, not as much as rents do. If you're familiar with my content, you know that I have the binder strategy, which is my method of getting tenants to request a rent increase, which has worked really well. It's added significantly in the last 2 years to my income because rents skyrocketed, and the strategy actually works really well in a time when rents are going up. Happy tenants, low turnover, and a good rent increase. Still doing expert witness testimony. That seems to get I get a lot more inquiries, the more lists that you get on and the more experience that you have. It was well after reaching millionaire status. So 2018, net worth passed $1 million. In 2020, I added YouTube. This was the first time that I started making videos. And it started because I was in the Facebook groups, in the BiggerPockets forums, trying to answer questions. I had the education for the industry now. In the beginning, I answered questions wrong, realized there were some things I needed to learn. So I actually educated myself more on the things I was weak on. YouTube pays billions of dollars to everyone but me. I monetized my channel because I wanted to have control of the advertising. AdSense on YouTube doesn't really make a lot of money. I think my best month was around $500. I'm working 30 hours a week on YouTube before doing the live streams because it used to be around 10 hours a video. Now the live stream, this cuts it down to maybe 3 hours. So it's actually decreased the amount of time it took on YouTube to actually, I think, be a little more productive because I think this format where I get to answer questions because I have no idea what questions, which I'm not even looking at yet, will spark in the conversation. I think this is a really productive format for this. So $500 a month for 30 hours a week. Someone that knows math will tell me that I'm not making a lot. But here's a stream of income that you can add if you have a strong social media following. So Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, whatever format you're on, can be YouTube as well. If you have people who watch your content, you can do really sneaky things like become an Amazon affiliate marketer. Or if you have enough of a following, you can have sponsors, you can have people who you can promote their materials. So here's something really sneaky that I do. I make a video that says something like, so let me know if you've seen this. Here are the locks that I use on my rental properties. But I don't do clickbait, and I don't support something I don't actually like. I buy 2 of these locks for every rental unit. I put them on the exterior doors. I use them because the batteries last longer than a year. I've never had a tenant lockout. In all of the locks I've ever purchased, I think I had one that had an issue, and we found the issue installing it. So I've had very little problems with these Schlag coated locks. So I make a video. I put it on YouTube. In the description, because I say in the description below, I'm going to put a link to where I get these locks, right? It's not just the lock. As an Amazon affiliate, when somebody like you clicks on that link and goes to Amazon to look at that lock for 24 hours, anything you buy on Amazon, the affiliate person that you use the link to get to Amazon gets their tiny little percentage. It's pennies or whatever it is. But the weekend and the week following the time I did the lock video, there was about $1,400 in income from Amazon affiliate links, which that's not a bad thing. It's not costing anybody anything else. They don't charge you anything extra. It's just since that link came from the affiliate is going to get paid for bringing you to Amazon. So affiliate marketing will grow as the channel grows, as the content gets watched by more people, as I do things like there should be a video coming out soon on what I do and how I do and why this book exists, which will have an Amazon link in it. Here's where I got the book. I actually sent one to Michael Zuber for his birthday. So there is what my streams of income were before I was a millionaire, once I became a millionaire, and what they're going to look like going forward.